Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Tuesday, August 29th. This is virtual lunch number 865. Our guest today is Rebecca Wissler, the Director of Business Development at Bryan Cave, Leighton Paisner, and this is part of our series on fueling firm growth with UniCourt. Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm great. How are you guys? Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
It's our privilege. I'm super excited about this and looking forward to this conversation. So what we typically do is we want to give the guest a chance to know who the audience is, and so I usually give everyone a chance to just say hello and tell you who they are. And I would love to start with Jeff.
Hey, Rebecca. Great to have you today. I'm Jeff Cox, the Director of Content for UniCourt, a legal data as a service company.
I'm just joined UniCourt to oversee their digital content marketing. That's what I'm doing now.
I am Molly McDonough. I'm the Senior Creative Services Manager at Catton and former editor and publisher of the ABA Journal. Very excited to be here. Excited about this series. I'm new to law firms, new-ish to law firms, so I'm kind of still absorbing all of the things.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Gilman. I'm a former practicing attorney turned law firm matchmaker. I work with law firm rainmakers to find them their exact right perfect fit so they have the right resources and appreciation to feel like they're getting what they want out of their careers and have some balance. I'm loving to hear about all of these firms and what they do for business development, because that's the first question all of my candidates ask. They feel like they're not being supported at their current firms a lot of the time.
Rebecca, Joe Scott, very nice to meet you. I'm also an attorney, but the last several years I've been doing global consulting for law firms and legal software companies.
So Scott Jaffe, I'm the Global Director of Finance and Administration. We're one of the largest single office firms that practice only matrimonial, maybe second largest, third largest. I've been here for 4 years, but I've been in similar roles for over 25 years. And I should mention that our client specializes in high net worth and high profile individual. And Bob Cohen, our founding partner, is probably the go-to person.
Hi, Rebecca. It's nice to meet you. I'm Monica Sandler. I'm the director of EstateWorks. We are a task-based workflow management tool for estate planning and probate attorneys. Actually, this week is my 4-year anniversary here. We are not global for security reasons. All of our clients' data remains in the continental US. I am a former law firm training manager, and I manage administrator. So I've worked with lots of attorneys.
I think today I am the Senior VP of Operations at Evolver Legal Services. I've been in the e-discovery, records, enterprise content, information governance genre for about an hour and a half. I have, along with my long flowing blonde flocking hair. And well, welcome to the Ari Fun Factor. So
hi, Rebecca. You will love this hour with Rebecca. She's one of the most wonderful people I know. So get ready for a treat. And now that Greg has joined, double that. As you know, I'm president of Merlin Marketing and Social Media. And although I am global, my husband likes to call this galactic headquarters of Merlin Marketing and Social Media, which I kind of like. And marketing and business development advisor. And I specialize in content, social and digital media, which these days means marketing and business development planning with heavy emphasis on LinkedIn training and podcast launches and Zoom and virtual presentation coaching. So I'm so glad you're here.
I'm Greg Lambert. I'm the Chief Knowledge Services Officer at Jackson Walker in Houston, and I also blog at Three Geeks in the Law blog and podcast at the Geek and Review. So,
hi everybody. Sean Evans. I was a managing director at Anchor, a consulting firm. Living in the e-discovery space. I've spent 20-something years in that space. I'm currently in between, taking a look at what's next, and we'll find it out. But obviously just love to catch up on some of the current things in our industry in these areas. And so that's what I'm joining for.
Rebecca, you're up. Let's see here. Just start. Tell us about your background and the work that you do at Bryan Cave.
Sure. Well, quick fun note. I've known Nancy, this is relevant, since I started in the industry. So my background, for everyone, in case you didn't hear me before, I live in Washington, D.C. Well, I live in Northern Virginia. My home base is Washington, D.C. But I started in legal marketing formally in-house at firms at a small litigation boutique in New Orleans. So I've been kind of back and forth between DC and New Orleans my entire career. I've worked at firms of all sizes, 40-person litigation shop. I've worked at a Southeastern super regional, and I've worked at global firms. So I feel like I have a good perspective of what's doable. I started as a solo marketer at my first firm, and then I really made it big there when I was able to hire one person and have one kind of half resource. And I say half because she was the managing partner's daughter, and I would work with whoever I could get. So I understand how to do a lot on a shoestring budget, which I think has made me pretty appealing to big law departments as well. So yeah, and then I live in Northern Virginia. I'm a working mom. I have a husband that also works full time. He's at Accenture. So we just, I make it work. I feel like I'm doing the full time working parent, big law grind a lot, but we make it work. And then quick story where I wanted to start, Nancy and I met at my very first Legal Marketing Association conference, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't know legal marketing, and a friend of mine, Laura, and I invited ourselves to dinner that Nancy was attending. And I've been riding her coattails ever since.
I don't know about that last part, but you are so sweet.
I love it. Nancy, the ambassador of legal marketing.
She really is.
Yes, of course.
Everybody knows Nancy.
Yeah, we're so lucky we get this constant interaction with Nancy. So tell us about the responsibilities of the Director of Business Development at Bryan Cave.
Yeah, so Bryan Cave is one of those big firms that's kind of divided up into 3 silos. Silo's not a great word, but that is kind of how we manage internally. I'm in charge of all of the global litigation growth. So there's also a real estate counterpart of mine and one in corporate transactions. So what I do is, lead the charge. I run a team of 11 right now and growing. We have 3 roles open because we're growing very quickly. And I run all of the BD growth and initiatives, efforts, budgeting, all of the stuff for the sub-practice teams under litigation. We have 9. That was significantly reduced over the last 5 years, kind of when the legacy firm Bryan Cave merged with the UK-based legacy firm Berwin Leighton Paisner. It was a good opportunity for a lot of streamlining. And it was right before the pandemic, so we'll talk about that later, I'm assuming. But presented a unique opportunity to kind of redefine how this role works too, and also the types of corporate clients that we're reaching out to. But how do I work with everyone there? It's again, it's whack-a-mole every day, like it is at a lot of big firms. Who's screaming the loudest, and trying to deal with that while guiding the ship strategically, reminding everyone we have a strategy for your group and your group and your group. We have a litigation strategy. This is where we're investing. So I would say every day, diplomacy is key. And I think that's how anyone in these roles succeeds, is knowing how to steer the ship in a diplomatic way.
How often are you in the different offices?
A lot. I think it was Greg just mentioned travel budget. We've used up our travel budget for the year as well. But half of my team is in London, and I have the privilege of going over to that office and meeting with them, staying connected to them. The London office of BCLP is huge, so it's important for me to be there and be in front of our lawyers there as well, not just in litigation, but in the other departments to which we're always selling. So, being present is paramount. Our biggest office in the US is St. Louis. I'm on a regular rotation to St. Louis. I have a lot of litigators in New York, as well as team members. I get up there. So yeah, I would say a regular rotation. I'm on planes, trains. The summer has been really nice because we are managing to a very aggressive profitability goal. So it's slowed down a bit. as we've pulled in the reins on our budget, which has actually been pretty nice.
You know,
everyone on the admin team welcomed that news.
I don't know. Nancy mentioned you have daughters, so I don't know how old they are. Can you tell us how old they are?
One is 5 and one is a newly minted 13, which is
wow,
another adventure.
How exciting. I'll just say that someone gave me a suggestion years ago when my kids were 8 and like 6, which was a very good time to give me that suggestion, which was to take each of them individually on a work trip with you when possible, whenever possible. And it's super stressful, but I've done it at least 5 times now, 6 times maybe with my kids, especially when they were each like 8 or 9, but then as they got older, my daughter was 12 and my son was like 14 or something. It was like incredible, but I didn't realize like it was great fun. I mean, I just took my son to Warsaw for something I was doing there, but like seeing their mom in her element with like in a leadership, like I think it's super cool for them, and you don't really realize it for like 5 or 10 years, but they'll like,
that's great advice.
Yeah. So it's so hard and it's fleeting because it's rare that you'd be able to actually take a child with you and not be like stressed every second because you're working, right? I know, like I was up all night, doing something, preparing for my thing yesterday, and so neither of my kids could have come with me, but anyway, I just throw that out there because I feel like it ends very quickly. My daughter just started college, so both my kids are now in college, so it's gone. But I think that another era is here. But I think that it was great advice, and I really took it to heart. And I'm constantly, and my wife took my daughter and her friend to court. I think my daughter's friend wants to be a lawyer because she watched my wife argue a case, and my daughter's like, no way. But I think my daughter's friend is like really into it and would like to go back and like be with my wife. So anyway, I throw that out there because I think it's
I love that.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get them to London with me in the spring, which would be dreamy. I'm going to need my husband for that. But even the short trips, I would love to do that. And then I have gone, we've kind of planned some family time with them after some of my New York visits, which they love to do. But I like, with the older daughter especially, she's kind of grown up with me. And actually, when I met Nancy, I think I was expecting her. And so she's grown up in the office and before I just would have her sit. I'm like, school's closed, you're here and in New Orleans, we had hurricanes all the time. And so schools were closed and she was an honorary firm team member for a couple of days. But yeah, I try to involve them, but that's great advice.
Early in your career, you mentioned entering the legal field, but you had various marketing roles outside of legal before focusing on law firm marketing. What inspired the shift?
Well, I think you're hard pressed to find someone who said, I was just really inspired one day and I wanted to become a law firm marketer. No one has ever uttered those words and probably never will. I think everyone's path is circuitous to this role. And then you find it and you're like, wow, I really click with this. My husband was in the Navy. We were on the Gulf Coast, and I found this ad agency that worked with law firms, a lot on the plaintiff side, which was pretty fascinating. And I was in grad school for marketing communications at the time, working on focus group research and whatnot. And that's what this agency did. And on the plaintiff side, and this was kind of right after all of the big tobacco settlements, and that was like fueling the economy in the legal marketplace across like Biloxi, Mississippi, and New Orleans and South Louisiana. So it was really fascinating work. And I was getting to know clients both on the plaintiff side who were wild, and I got to go in the courtroom that had been in a couple movies and those South Mississippi legal dramas. And then I started to make friends on the defense side too, and thought like, I could really do this. That law firm really needs a better website. And then a law firm in New Orleans posted a job that I responded to, and it was for a part-time marketer to do, this, all the things. And I said, this is a full-time job. I would love to have it, but let's talk about that. And so then that's kind of how I found it. But yeah, it kind of all started on the ad agency side. I'd worked for a couple ad agencies after college, and Molly and I have have a connection too, because I majored in journalism, was a broadcast news major, worked overseas while my husband was stationed there for American Forces Network. And so I have a love of writing, which I think always helps and makes this work much easier. You know, you have to write. So I think that also helped me excel in my early roles.
You know, speaking of the colorful characters on the plaintiff's bar, I was at a big law firm and I was in litigation, and I remember I was responsible for a series of cases, and in order to negotiate something, I literally had to fly to Las Vegas to a casino to meet the plaintiff's lawyer, because that's where he was going to be, and that was where he wanted to have this meeting. So I and the local counsel, like literally, it was just, I remember being very funny. We're like at the lobby of like the Venetian and I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, why did I fly here? It was crazy, but fun, colorful, group of folks. So before I open it up to questions, one of the things that I thought was super interesting was that before becoming director of business development, you were director of certain practice groups. I feel like that's been something of a common feature for some of the folks that we've interviewed in terms of before taking over, a full director role, that there are other roles, maybe it seems like narrower, before you kind of go firm wide. And so I just wanted to get a sense of how did that experience help prepare you for your current position?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's essential before you can handle a role of this scope. You need to have your own little fiefdom to run, whether it's a practice group, or some firms have it set up to where it's a region or something like that. And I think it's important because it helps you with targeting, no matter what. And I'll expand more on this. The hardest part and the key to actual sales is knowing who to target and knowing how to keep the lawyers calm, that by targeting this client, you are not ignoring all the other clients, But when you have responsibility over certain practice areas, you get to know a smaller group of clients really well, at least you should. And then for me, what was also really helpful was I had my practice areas within litigation, these sub teams. And I got to know, the needs of those clients very well. And then I moved on to when I went from a regional firm to my first global firm, which was Sidley. It was still it's still a practice area. It was a global role, but it was life sciences. So it kind of shifted from smaller practice areas to an industry group, which is tremendously helpful to just kind of expand what you think is expand your knowledge of the work that lawyers across various departments do. And it helps you to sell more to clients who are shopping for lawyers who know what they do. We hear it all the time. You have to know my business. I'm looking for does a lawyer know my business? And that industry expertise is just essential. So within the practice area, you learn what lawyers do. You learn the guts of their work, how to talk about it in your marketing and in your communications. But once you kind of shift your perspective to know what people in the lawyers in the industry are looking for, you can apply that better. So it's it's a really important piece of the puzzle, because you learn what the lawyers do. When you shift to the industry piece, you learn what all the lawyers do outside of the practices that you are responsible for. So I do think it's important to have both of the experience in both of those areas before you can fully appreciate everything that you need to think about at a global director role or CMO or whatever the title is, head of marketing. You have to be able to think about exactly, what the lawyers are doing, what is their practice, how do they help in that niche? And then for people in our role that communicate well, you have to talk them through how to expand that.
Yeah. So Rebecca, I guess one question, I think, given where you are at Bryan Cave, are there any unique challenges you see for international law firms when it comes to using data for business development and marketing, or law firms like Bryan Cave, Leighton Paisner, who've gone through mergers? Like, are there any challenges that you see with using data from an international perspective, or a large firm that's merged?
Yeah. So we don't have enough time for me to answer this question, unfortunately. But in an attempt to be brief, I mean, the challenges were all around data, right? Like after the merger, I joined a year after the merger. They were still very much addressing the myriad challenges around how to access each other's data. I mean, we have some departments where we'll still find glitches and hey, I can't access that. What is up with that? You know, software that is just wasn't compatible. Our experience management system talks to two different entry points still. So we address that all the time. Billing was a nightmare for a while. You know, it's when there are firm mergers and you're bringing on international firms, you know, I think the data entry point and licensing is one of the biggest challenges and headaches. So we still have challenges where my team can look up who a client is using. I do it in, 90 seconds. I can have a full brief for a partner heading to a lunch with a couple questions that I want to know the answers to when they get back, given the suite of law firms they're currently working with. It's a lot harder for my colleagues in the UK. They are granted, I think this all with the understanding that in the US we have a general, no expectation of privacy. And, I think that's gone out the window. And in the UK and the EU, they're so protective of their data and their information. It takes a lot more digging to pull up information about individuals and firms, and even if it's not public, it's a lot harder to get. So those are the biggest challenges right now. Where an RBD team, even let's say use that example of just prepping a partner for a simple lunch, where we want to come away with an idea of where we could expand our work with them. It takes the UK team a little bit longer because they don't have access to as much transparent data as we have in the US.
A lot of British firms have historically compensated their employees in lockstep. Do you find that that's a challenge to motivate the partners to develop business?
Are you talking about their administrative employees?
No, I'm talking about
or their lawyers?
Partners. The lawyers, the partners have historically been paid based on basically how long they've been there, And so I wonder if you find that to be a challenge when you're trying to motivate the partners to develop their book of business.
I think it depends on the law firm setup. Our firm isn't like that, but I do know that historically they were. So I think it depends on the culture of the firm and, what's the bonus incentive. And I think firms that have a big US presence and who have leadership in the US might do a better job incentivizing lawyers to develop their own work. Personally, as I do one-on-one coaching with both as associates, as I work with small group, or our team works with groups of associates or junior partners, I call it their ticket to freedom. That's a little bit melodramatic, and I say it like I use that phrase on purpose because it is. And, you can do whatever you want at the firm within reason. If you have, a couple big clients and you're originating that work. We also changed our comp model. I can't even remember when this went into effect. Maybe a little over a year ago, almost 2 years ago, where we work with a team model. So we know who originates the work, but they're also incentivized to pull people into that team. And it's shared evenly. And that is a big motivator. It's similar to the models that big four consulting firms, major consulting firms use to hunt impacts. That's made a big difference in my personal experience as I work with partners and motivate them. I don't hear as much anymore of, well, what's in it for me if I help him? And I used to hear that a lot. But in the UK, I think they're moving away from that lockstep model more, especially as some of these smaller firms are merged into larger global machines like ours.
Right.
I love the freedom
Thank you.
point. You're your point about characterizing business development as a pathway to freedom. I think because I remember when I was practicing, there were several young lawyers who had figured out business development, and they were flying here, flying there. The constraints of, I don't know, their billable time or pressures from those who were
Yeah.
supervising them was just not the same as for the rest of us. And I was just like, that's the pathway.
It's true.
And I've, since
It's
developed my
true.
own
And
business for a long time, and I feel proud of it. Yeah.
I have some personal friends of mine too who are lawyers, and I hear they'll ask me for advice, and I talk about like the service partner grind, and I'm like, you've got to get out of that service partner grind, because that is who you don't want to be unless you do. There are some people, I shouldn't say that. There are some people who are perfectly fine servicing another client, right? With the understanding that those relationship partners at BCLP, they're comped the same, at bonus time now, because they're a quintessential part of that team. That's a right way to do it. But that isn't the way it is across a lot of law firms. So,
Well,
they have the understanding that they're,
I will just say, and I see we have several questions, so I don't want to
yeah,
monopolize my time with you. No, it's my fault. I'm just chatting with you here. But I was speaking at an event yesterday to a team, not a law firm, but a team of service provider companies team, and we were talking about business development. There was a moment of discussion about business development, and I was just talking about how who's responsible for business development, and a third of the room raised their hand. And then I said, imagine if everyone in the room felt some responsibility for business development. You knew to exponentially raise the prospects of this organization. And here are some very practical ways that you, frontline project manager, who does not think in any way that you have business development value or responsibility. And I was just like, you could try this. What about this? And in my research, I've seen that people who do, and they were all just like, huh. The empowerment factor just like elevated, and they were super excited. And I said, a lot of this is an adventure. The fun of it is very cool, especially when it works. Sometimes it doesn't work, and you're like, oh, that was still kind of fun, So I think that's it's a key point. All right, Lynn was first, so please.
So I'm curious, what does your team look like? You said you have 11 people. What kind of roles do you have there?
Yeah, good question. So, and this isn't globally. Globally, we have about 88 people.
Right, but you're talking about the litigation growth.
These
right?
are this is litigation BD. We have 5 in London. And they range from a senior manager who's essentially my number 2. I rely on her every day for a lot of stuff. It is essential that she maintains credibility and trust with the entire London office, inside of litigation and outside, and she's very well respected. Down to our marketing assistant is there in London, and she is the engine that makes it all go. With our, email maintenance, maintaining our lists, knowing who's gone to which meetings where, making sure we're constantly adding and feeding to those lists. I have a BD manager there. I have 2 marketing execs, which help with our events there, conferences, client engagement. They all are client facing too. We are blessed enough to have a really, really, the most beautiful law firm office that I've probably ever been in that office. So we do as much entertaining there as we can. That also helps our budget and our bottom line, trying to keep things in-house. But they mingle with the clients and get to know them. And they all have big personalities. And then here in the States, I have them, the States, it's harder because everyone is spread out. Our expertise is spread out. But I have a senior manager who works with IP. And I should say the managers and senior managers are practice focused. They are experts at those areas, which is also talking about the credibility of our team. That's essential to build credibility as a BD team. You have to have people that know what the lawyers are doing every day. And when they say, I need a 3-page summary of our experience in this super narrow, lane, we have to know what they're talking about and be able to turn that around in a way that the client understands. So they are practice focused. And then we have a couple support people that are an essential part of our engine here in the States too, spread out.
Thanks. And
Sure.
if we come back around and I have another chance, I would love to understand what your tech stack looks like.
I really was very interested in hearing about how you share credit for hunting in packs, that cross-selling and cross-marketing, because that's something that law firms are always talking about. Oh, we have a collegial environment and everybody always wants to help, but then they don't actually reward it with money. So it's very hard to get somebody to get up and do it all the time. So that sounds amazing. It sounds like it's working very well. Do you find yourself in the role of advocating on behalf of the attorneys to get the things done that they want to, or having to say no and be the gatekeeper of the funds because, oh, that's not in our plan for this year, or you've used your budget for this year already? If somebody can make a business case for something being more of an investment than an expense, can they go outside of whatever's already been decided?
Wow, that's the question of the season right now. I'm on the phone about this all the time. Because as I mentioned at the top of the call, we have a COO who is really hitting his stride now. Jason Marty, who joined us in 2021 from Baker McKenzie. And I've learned so much in my career from aggressive COOs. And we are now managing to this very aggressive profitability goal. And we're going to hit it, or at least we're going to hit real close to it. But managing this BD budget is essential. We've pulled every lever in the face of an uncertain marketplace this year that we needed to pull in order to stay on our mission. And that's something that has been communicated top down at the firm this year, which has been really cool to see. So everyone feels some ownership. We want to hit this profitability goal. You all have a part in that. I say that all the time to remind people I am not the bad guy here, but we have this, I have to stay within these practice budgets, within our department. Let me try to get creative and find funds. But yeah, I've had some really uncomfortable calls. I've had a lot of uncomfortable calls this year, because also our budget, as everyone kind of braced in February for this big recession, and I redid the budget. We redid the budget then at the end of April. So it is not what we started with. It isn't what we planned for as we built our budget last November, was really when we finalized the budget. So I do a lot of apologizing and writing language for certain organizations to understand we're going to reinvest with you next year. We are on this mission, So there are other things where our team really has to be creative, and that's what I encourage them to do. To say, let's restructure this ask. Let's do this for this vendor, for this, if it's a conference company, or for this client, and let's tailor something that is better for us, it's better for them. So, it takes a lot of creativity. We're in the peak season of that now as we all head into the fall push. So yeah, a little bit of both, I would say. And I find money for things that have just got to be done. And if it is attached to a client, I'm going to find the money. If it is a third party conference that's really, really hard to track the ROI, I might, we'll probably defer to next year because we're on a mission. And then the first part of your question about the comp, it's been interesting, right? And it wasn't met with, from what I know, I am involved in very, very few of the conversations at the top, none of the conversations at the very top around comp. But we, as armchair psychologists in this role, as you all know, is half of a legal marketer's job. That's how it feels sometimes. We are on the receiving end of how all the partners feel about it. And not everyone was comfortable with it at first. And it has absolutely made a difference in the way, like I said before, I never hear what's in it for me. Why would I help them? I'm not going to be affected at bonus time, if we grow XYZ companies work with us, because now they are. And then I also like that I can advocate and play a part with, this happened the other day. I found out a partner that I work with had not been formally added to the client team. She doesn't know this, but I know that partner, the partner who kind of owns that client relationship, is just, it's nothing, you know, it wasn't a big deal. He is just not our most administratively gifted client, I will, partner, I will say. So I was like, he just didn't hit the button to add you. Like, well, you know, and so then she's getting all much deserved credit for everything like that. So there are growing pains with that, but I think largely it's been received just fine.
I think it's
Now that
definitely
people are
it's a complaint I hear all the time from partners that
always
they can't get other people to go to the meeting with them. Nobody shares credit. It's, you know, it's very hard to only be evaluated based on the work you bring in and the work you work on, and to be a nice person and get up and go to the pitch meeting, because
Right.
that takes you away from what you're actually earning money for. So the idea that you've built cross-selling, cross-marketing into it is going to put you ahead of a lot of firms.
Rebecca, can I just ask, so you started in March of 2020 there, and you know, there have been a lot of conversations. I'm actually fascinated by how challenging this still remains for organizations to bring their people back, and you know, navigating all of these different issues that still are lingering and seem to be lingering for the long term. But how are you able to, you know, come in, focus on business development remotely, and now still at this stage, you know, navigate a kind of an unsettled, let's say, an unsettled environment?
Yeah. So yeah, March 2nd, 2020, which it felt like everything was burning down around me every day. And my whole niche, my MO within BD is, I say sales a lot. I want our lawyers familiar with sales, and I don't want them to feel like it's a dirty word. And I was like, oh my God, who are our airline clients? How do I find that? How do I call this person? How, you know, every day as the world changed, every single day, I was like, oh my God, this is going to affect our ag clients. How do I find out who our ag clients are? How do we find out, you know, and I was like, I don't have time to do my orientation. I need the lawyers on the phone. And I was on the phone with a client at JP Morgan my first day. This one of our partners in St. Louis called. He was like, we are so glad you're here. We've needed someone in this role. I need you to talk with me to so-and-so at JP Morgan about, I don't even remember what the issue was at the time. And I was grateful for his trust right out of the gate, but that was wild. And it was the hardest, I think, establishing credibility and establishing trust for our team as I kind of rebuilt the team. You have to work harder than you ever could, you know, going into every office and doing just a world tour where people were there and they can feel your charisma in person, which I think a lot of people rode for a long time in this industry. And now, you know, we're relying on the quality of our work product. We have to produce excellent plans, excellent writing. It's a lot more than just kind of the one-on-one BD coaching that so many people in these roles did before the pandemic. Give it and credit to them, because it's the foundation for the trust that we have now. And that's what I did too. It's a harder job, I think, when you're navigating, okay, I'm going to go to St. Louis. Will you guys be there? Or please make sure people know we're going to do some things in person and get people in. It's different from, you know, we're out and about now, but this firm is very much hybrid and we plan to stay that way. So, you know, there's a lot of pre-communications that needs to happen. And I think I emphasize in person for our junior team members too, because they need, especially those who are working with practice groups, because they need to learn in person what the lawyers are doing for their clients. That part I still struggle with, to be honest.
How many days a week are you in the office?
Depends on the week, depends on my kids' practices, depends on a lot of things, but 2 to 3.
Yeah.
3 is a very aggressive week to me. I'm in usually 2. I'm in 5 if I'm traveling. Whomever I could meet with in that city, whenever they want to go in, I'm in. And in London, I'm in 5. I go home Friday night. People are in on Fridays who maybe aren't in Monday or Tuesday. So it all just kind of depends. And I like that flexibility. I think we have learned that our lawyers and our business services team very much appreciates that flexibility too.
I want to acknowledge Molly's question here, just in terms of thought leadership as a business development tool. Any thoughts there?
Lots of thoughts on thought leadership. It's essential. It was funny when I started at this role, when I would talk about BD, I've completely changed how the litigation lawyers think about it and the initial approach, certainly on the team side too. But when I would say there's an opportunity here, they're like, all right, well, let's write something. I'm like, no, you need to get on the phone with them. What are we talking about? But thought leadership was essential. It was the quintessential way to brand yourself. I think it is a tool, and it's one that we rely on pretty heavily. I think it's evolving, and we're in that space right now at BCLP where I am saying we need to do less writing. We need to do more talking. We need people to hear our lawyers' voices and see their faces. And I'm not as interested in it as many client alerts. And that's kind of where we are. So on that side of our marketing and BD team, I know my colleague who's the head of that department is looking at staffing there and the resources that we have and should have in order to evolve where we go with thought leadership. Bottom line, it's critical. That's how our lawyer or a lot of our clients qualify our expertise. We've been able to really develop our cryptocurrency practice area quickly because we had a lot of thought leadership and white papers and publishing, speaking gigs in that space in a short amount of time.
Same. I would say the same for us too. And I came in kind of midstream with that, especially in that crypto space. I will just throw out for everyone here that, this is my area, but I agree with Rebecca on this too, with you on a tool. Although I take a much broader viewpoint of what thought leadership is and include all that programs, anything, any webinar. And that's one of the things I'm trying to work with and instill this culture where, you don't do a one-off webinar without a takeaway, and that I can't, help me get that as a blog post and on your social. And, it's iterative. And this is where a lot of, Greg, you'll be happy, AI tools come in handy on the marketing side that we're playing around with a lot.
How is, and Ari, you'll probably get this from today's blogospheres that's going ballistic over the next statement I'm going to say. How is the change of legal technology changing your message to your potential clients? And I can redefine or redefine a little bit what I'm trying to ask for, if that makes it easier for you and others that are on here that aren't in my space. There has been a tremendous amount of acquisitions, and one that happened today, which is going to change a huge amount of people's thinking and how they do. But with generative AI, I agree with you. I think you and I can have a separate conversation.
Yeah. Just so everybody knows, Reveal announced today that it was buying both Logical and iPro, which are two large vendors in the space.
Right.
And I understand it was valued at like $1 billion or something.
It's $1 billion. Yeah, it's $1 billion dollar value.
It's pretty massive in legal tech.
Right. So with that, and then with generative AI, with LLM, with all of these different, and I'll say this, and I'll know I'm going to get thrown on the bus by a lot of people, fake terminologies that are out there as it relates to legal services. How are you, doing two things: controlling the language and communications from your attorneys to your clients, and how are you changing your marketing strategy to address the changing environments such as LLM, generative AI, AI in general, and now continuous acquisitions of the industry as it continues to redefine itself and shrink, but at the same time change the technology that's out there that doesn't work? I mean, I didn't say that last statement.
That's actually the perfect question to ask someone in big law, right? The answer is real short. So for us, very slowly, we're doing no communicating to our clients about what we're doing, except we've got a working group. And we have a really intense task force looking at all of that stuff and looking at the best programs for us to safely communicate how we're using it. to our clients. And right now, our experts in that area are talking to their clients about their areas of risk, but we aren't making any major strategic changes in the face of the breakneck pace of all of these acquisitions, the evolution of technology. We're testing things out. We're becoming increasingly efficient, and we're being very thoughtful about how we communicate that.
Rebecca Wissler, everybody. What a wonderful
Yay!
conversation, Rebecca.
Guys.
Thanks so much for your time, for
This
sharing
has
your
been a lot of
insights.
fun.
Yeah,
That's
awesome.
been
It's been a
fun.
privilege for us. I want to thank you. I want to thank our friends at UniCourt for supporting this series on fueling firm growth. I hope that everyone has a fantastic day, and appreciate this opportunity so much. Take care.